I'm assuming you've played Shenmue?
Yeah.
Would you mind if I ask you two a question or two?
No, sure.
Suzuki-san.
大丈夫じゃない？
本当？
シェンム3の話して。
あ、もしもし、セム3とか、あとなんとか、なんか罰の話なんかあったらさ、He basically said he's tired of being asked about Shenmue 3.
I'm sorry we made you wait.
No, this is a very impromptu thing. So just turned out that we were going to hang out and have lunch, and I said, hey, do you want to come early and meet David? And I thought, well, this is a perfect moment, or a perfect opportunity, because when I play your games, I'm oftentimes thinking about me playing his games back in 2000, 2001, 2003.
It's really funny because at the time of Shenmue, I was working on Indigo Prophecy. And when Shenmue was released, I thought that we followed the same process, the same thinking. We found different solutions, but I thought that we were looking for the same thing, is to tell an interactive story.
Storytelling and being able to express the story was a big thing, but it was also the thing that really consumed him was trying to figure out how to make a game that was 60 hours or 100 hours, where lots of things are going on, but that he's able to tell the story through multiple mediums. Is that the way that you? I imagine you approach you're not thinking about how to entertain people for 100 hours.
No, I mean, no one wants to be entertained for so long. That's way too long.
I don't know. I played Dark Souls for about 200, so.
No, but it becomes a pain. But no, I think
lots of pain in that game.
Yeah, I think 8 to 10 hours is a good length. My gut feeling with Shenmue, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was trying to tell a story. It was one of the first ones to use QTEs. He invented them pretty much. And I thought it was a very interesting way because it was about using contextual actions rather having a generic mechanic to do very different things, so the game would become more fluid. And I thought it was a very, very clever decision to make.
Yeah, as you know, like Yu Suzuki comes from a background of arcade games, and he was first thinking about games that require timing and very kind of simple actions, but that players can play over the course of not 60 hours but 60 seconds, right? And then when he started thinking about Shenmue and knowing that this is going to be more of a, as he puts it, like a consumer-focused game, more of like, I guess you could say a console, like a kind of a couch gameplay, the idea was to take something that's not as difficult, not as punishing as an arcade game, and then to kind of loosen up the time a little bit and allow players to make mistakes, but then the next QT that comes up is a little easier, and then it's a little bit easier, and it's a little bit easier, to try to allow them to kind of have that action, have that kind of thrill, but not be so punishing as like an arcade game. And then the idea was to mix them in with the cinematics to try to make it a lot more, more thrilling and things like that. So I thought I never thought about it from the perspective of the arcade,
I think it's
history.
funny because what you describe is really more thinking about the game like a journey than like a challenge.
Right.
And I think this is definitely something we have in common.
Yes. Yeah, an adventure, he put it, yeah.
But it's funny because I was really designing Fahrenheit at the time Shenmue was released, so it was really parallel routes in many ways, and that's interesting. And I think I'm a big admirer of Japanese designers, and because I think they try to do things differently. And sometimes it's maybe too different for me, but I'm a big fan of you, but I'm also a big fan of Ueda-san and many Japanese designers. They just think differently. And especially when you come to E3, you really enjoy people thinking differently because, okay, some fresh air and exploring different ways, different routes, and that's good. This is what the industry needs.
Maybe I'll flip it over and ask you a question, or maybe both of you guys a question. But I'm curious if Suzuki Yu knows about all this, but I feel like no matter how long Shenmue's been around, and no matter how long QTEs have been around, and how many great games like, Heavy Rain or God of War they're in, they get a little bit of a bad rap. I'm kind of curious, like, what your take is on them. I'll explain and maybe see if he has any other kind of
QTEs is a very strange thing because it's.
Why is it so divisive? Why is it so?
It is, especially for people. Well, it really depends what you expect from your game experience. Again, some people want to show their skills, and this system is not really about skills. So they feel frustrated because they feel like it's not really a video game because it's too simple for them. But other people say, well, I don't want to show my skills, I just want to leave something and experience something. And if the system works, and if it's enjoyable, and if I can understand it and I can play it, it's not in the way, fair enough. And it's really interesting because on Heavy Rain we got very negative feedback about QTEs, especially from people who didn't play the game.
Right.
They thought, this is not really a video game, I don't want to play this. And it was really brutal and really like, that's crap. And people who played the game just enjoyed them. They thought it was pleasant, it was easy, it was what they expected, and it fit very well in the game, I think. So it's I don't know why it's so difficult to get people to understand that, but fair enough. I mean.
Yeah.
最初はやっぱり普通のタイミングゲームやってる人は簡単すぎるから面白くないっていう人もいるけど、やっぱりライトユーザーはいいんじゃないかな。
So he basically said the same thing you did, where I'm not going to bother translating everything you said, because he basically said the same thing. He said, I asked about in Japan, were QTEs pretty controversial when Shenmue came out? And he said, yeah, it was a little bit controversial with the hardcore users that found that it was too easy, and then for the light users, they were able to get into the game, they really liked it. So it's
the real question they ask is, does a game have to be difficult to be enjoyable? I mean, does it have to be difficult?
So from Yu's perspective, he thinks that difficulty of challenge is important for any type of game, but it just depends on what type of game you're making. It's like in a puzzle game, you don't want it to be, I'm putting words in his mouth now, but like you don't want it to be just the puzzles like right there in front of you. You want to have a challenge, and he said in Shenmue what they did was they oftentimes looked at they said they want to keep it a simple timing puzzle experience, and they would look at how many times players were missing different cues, and then from there they would actually make the game easier. And so, and also I think in Kakuto no Buben mo so dattakke, and I didn't know this, but in their fighting, like their virtual fighter type of like two one-on-one fighting sections too, if you're getting hit a lot, they actually made the game easier, which I didn't know. I thought I was winning all that time, but maybe maybe the system was actually helping me.
相手の隙が多くなってくる。
そうだね。
バンバンってやって、バンと打ってくださいってずっと待ってた。
He says, yeah, and oftentimes they would get into that mode of just like, come, okay, now hit me now. It's time for the player to feel better. So.
プレイヤーは自分が強くなって勝ったとプレイヤーは思う。
そうだね。It's like, yeah, he really wants the player to feel like it's them when they finally, deliver the final blow and take out the character and take out the guy. And I don't know, do you feel like there's those elements still in Beyond? I mean, like the thing I respect you most is I feel like you flip over the table on pretty much everything that has to do with video game, like history in both the good and bad ways. But I feel like you still have elements of, traditional game design in the games. Like you want players to feel good after like a kind of a difficult section of the game, or maybe you don't.
No, I don't.
I can never assume anything about you.
I want them to feel something, good or bad, or miserable or sad, or as long as you feel something when you play. Good. I mean, we reached our goal. The last thing you want is someone to be totally indifferent to what's going on. Say, well, I don't care. Then you lose the player.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, you can be defeated in an action scene and still feel something interesting for the game.
In your heart, like, what's your goal, or what's your measurement for success when you're thinking about this title? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
What I try to achieve is to create a very strong sense of empathy for the main character, for Jodie. Because the game is the story of her life, and you will know her since she was 8. Be with her when she was this angry teenager, and be with her again when she's this young adult. And you'll be with her in the happy times and difficult times in her life. And what I'm looking for is that by the time you complete the game and you turn off your console, you have the feeling that you lost someone really close, someone you knew by heart, and that I want you to miss her in a way.
ゲームしてない間も思い出すとか、やっぱりそういうのは必要。
He was saying that is also for Shenmue, that was one of his goals, is that he wanted, when you turn off the game, that you're still thinking about the world and thinking about Ryo. So on Shenmue, he was saying that, unlike a film where you have 2 or 3 hours of just something that's really compact, you know exactly what line's going to play it here, you know that for the most part, your viewer is going to experience the whole thing in one sitting. With Shenmue, he had to think about kind of separating in different chapters and different play sessions, so it continues with the player, even though they might put it down for a day and they're playing it over the course of 2 weeks. And I think that definitely resonated with me. I was definitely thinking about Shenmue as I went out throughout the day, and I'm just kind of curious if that's something that you thought about with Beyond, because you're not, oftentimes people are like, they used to say the same thing about my old boss, like, why don't you just go make a movie? Well, first of all, it's going to be a pretty damn long movie, but it's also, it's a different kind of experience. I'm curious if that's what are you thinking about in terms of different play times and different sittings, or is it just one big epic, like you're watching Lord of the Rings trilogy for 10 hours straight,
No. I think about this, but my games are usually split in scenes, and each scene usually is a story within the story. So you can just play one scene and have a satisfying experience with a sense of closure, and stop playing and then come back and move to the next scene. And it was pretty much the case with the Heavy Rain, where the scenes were shorter. I think the scenes were about 20 minutes long. Here on Beyond, we have some scenes that are maybe 45 minutes long. But same thing, there are one story within the story, because I like this kind of procedural thing where you have a story arc at the size with the length of the story, but at the same time each scene has its own story arc, and sometimes within a scene you have a story arc within the story arc within the story arc.
And so that was intentional because of the different players' playtime, is what you're thinking?
No.
Or is this the way you wrote it?
It's just the way I thought it worked, because it's also the kind of length that you may find in films. So people are used to have stories that are maximum 40 to 45 minutes and not 10 hours long. Right. So that was something important, but it was very natural and easy to do. It was not like, I need to do this when that's not a request. Right.
Well, this is very fun. I appreciate it's a very unusual type of press sort of thing, but I really thank you so much for doing this kind of fun thing.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you in person.
I was really excited to be able to bring you two together. The two worlds collide to see what happens.
It's not really a collusion.
朝ちょっとパッと回って、僕やっぱり気になるゲーム写真撮ってたんだよ。
He said that this morning he went around the E3 conference and he's like he just took pictures of anything that caught his attention, and so yeah, exactly. So the proof's there. This is not just. Very good. Yeah.
日本帰ってから調べれば出てくると思って忘れないように。
He says like he's really excited about the game. When he goes back to Japan, he's going to look up as much as he can. So
thanks. Hey, I will come to Tokyo for TGS. I mean,
Tokyo TGS の時に来日するからもしなんか出会う
an opportunity to meet. I'd love to see you there.
なんか食べましょう。
He would love to eat something together if you have time.
Sure. And if you're in Paris anytime, please let me know.
So he's very excited about the fact that you're a Parisian company. So. Thanks again, David.
Thank you very much.